That's not what I want. Just give me a minute here. Sorry, everyone.
You're all good. Yeah, sorry for being a few minutes late.
No worries at all. Are you guys just seeing the slide view now? You don't see the presenter notes or anything?
Yeah. Perfect.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Amren. I'm the district technician here at the Cumberland County Soil and Water Conservation District. Thank you for having me. I hope the rest of the webinar series has been going well. But today the district has our yardscaping program. We have two separate yardscaping presentations that we do, but this was the first one that we had, which is focusing on healthy lawn care in ways that you can, still follow conventional lawn care practices, but with a being more mindful of stormwater pollution and what you're applying on your lawns. And our new one is more focused on um, moving away from your conventional lawns and transitioning to more uh, ecologically friendly gardens and other ways to reduce lawn space while addressing stormwater pollution. But we will go ahead and get started. I just want to give a brief overview, just a little bit about the history and the role that soil and water conservation districts have played in the United States since they were created. So they were established by the US government as a result of the Dust Bowl that was happening in the 1930s. So lots of poor agricultural practices combined with long periods of drought and high temperatures resulted in, as everyone knows, I'm sure, about the Dust Bowl, period of time where agriculture really was not doing well, and we had to get together and start addressing what our needs were and what farmers' needs were. Uh, After we started seeing all these problems with, loss of fertile soils. So soil and water conservation districts were created to play the role to help work with farmers, residences, and now we work with a lot of municipalities and businesses and work, for the Cumberland County Soil and Conservation District. We serve the greater Portland area and Cumberland County and a few towns in York County. So we determine local needs and we try to meet what the public is interested in focusing on. So the direction of our work is widely influenced by what people are interested in at the current time. So today at the Soil and Water Conservation Districts, we mostly focus on our educational programs with classroom lessons and field trips at local schools in the greater Portland area, teaching residential workshops like this one, holding professional conferences, providing general technical assistance to residences, um, and then we have larger contract work and erosion and sedimentation control inspections for construction sites, and we do help lake associations with lake protection products, and you name it, we probably play a small role or have participated in some area in the realm of this work. So now that there's a little bit of background about the conservation districts, we're going to get into the topic of the presentation today. So this is all about how to grow and move away from your conventional lawn care, land care practices to have a healthier lawn. So conventional land care practices that have been around since, the 1950s, where it's nice to have your low mode green monoculture grass lawn is, maybe some people don't know that that is actually could be more detrimental or a hindrance to your lawn. Uh, that might make it harder for you to grow your grass or, you know, you might be having some weed or pest problem, and then it's also impactful for our stormwater runoff entering our water bodies. So we'll talk a little bit about the background of stormwater pollution, and then we'll transition into steps on how to grow a safe and healthy lawn and talk about practices like mowing, aerating, soil amendments, and how to take a soil test, and then get into some common lawn pests and how to manage those. And then we can do a little review and go through a maintenance calendar. And then at the end, if there's time, I'm happy to take some questions. There's also, before I get into, well, maybe I don't want to tab out of this, but our the district website has some yardscaping fact sheets that go alongside these presentations. And if anyone's interested in taking a look at those, they kind of, well, if this was a in-person presentation, we would give the handouts and they would go in order. But if you're interested, you can go on our website and then find our yardscaping page, and there's some supplemental information in those little handout fact sheets that will go along with these slides if anyone is interested, and I can post the link later. But the goals of our yardscaping program at the district are, save you your money, save you time for, people that are always constantly mowing their lawn or applying their fertilizers and pesticides. That's pretty time consuming. So hopefully moving towards more sustainable, healthy lawn care practices will make your land care a little more low maintenance. And it's important that, you address applying pesticides and fertilizers, and we want to make sure that your lawn that you're living on is healthy for you and your family and also the environment. Excuse me, just 1 minute. Apologies. So to start off our discussion about healthy lawn care, I think we first need to address how exactly, healthy lawn care practices or just your conventional lawn care practices might actually, how those are causing larger issues in our watersheds and in the environment. So the big culprit, the big topic that we need to start thinking about is stormwater runoff. So when water's in during a rainstorm or a snowstorm and it comes into contact with impervious surface like a pavement or a roadway or a driveway or a roof or compacted soil, that will eventually run off until it enters a storm drain and then travels through stormwater infrastructure into the nearest surface water, or it's going to find its way into another permeable surface, and that might be a garden or vegetated buffer forested area, or it could be your lawn, and that may move its way into, might run off the lawn into a storm drain, or it might infiltrate and enter our groundwater and eventually reach an aquifer. So the reason why this might be a problem is, as that runoff is moving and, a 1-inch storm on your 1,000 square foot driveway, that's what's coming off of that and not draining right into the ground is going to go down the street and enter a catch basin. That's a lot of water that has a lot of time to pick up, whatever's sitting there. So, cars driving on the road, little bits of metal fragments and oils and any other car product that's dripping off of or breaking off of a car, or things that you apply on your driveway or like a municipality applies on the road. So like winter salts and sands, those are all picked up, but also anything that you're applying on your lawn. So fertilizers, pesticides, you have some erosion issues on your property and you're a lot of exposed soil is being eroded away and picked up by stormwater runoff, and it's being carried down to a storm drain or your pet waste that's sitting there, or anything else that is going to be able to be conveyed by stormwater runoff into and get its way into a water body can be problematic for stormwater, thinking about stormwater pollution or what's entering our watersheds. So the issues with, we'll start with talking about pesticides. The issues with pesticides is they're not, you might be spraying it intentionally. So you have a grub problem and you're spraying an insecticide to kill your grubs, or you have a Japanese knotweed problem, or you have broadleaf plantain or something you're spraying like 2,4-D. And the problem with those pesticides and products is a lot of them are indiscriminate and they don't necessarily target one thing. So if you are applying your pesticides and some of them run off, or you don't get all the pesticide on your lawn and some of it's getting onto an impervious surface and making its way down into whatever stream the drain pipes outlet to, they might get into the water body and accumulate there, and then it's also going to start affecting the aquatic organisms that are in freshwater and saltwater ecosystems. And then with fertilizers, same deal with being able to run off of your lawn. Half of it's not even absorbing into the groundwater, probably, if you're applying too much. And then those make their way down through the storm drains and into freshwater streams, or down into, in Portland, they might, go into Back Bay, or in South Portland, they're draining out into Willard Beach or wherever. So all that excess nitrogen and phosphorus, that's, good for your plants. That's what you want to be feeding them. Phosphorus is important for root growth, and that's found in a lot of fertilizers. That particularly is bad for freshwater ecosystems because that causes algal blooms. And then on the other side, you have nitrogen that causes marine algal blooms, which, not only don't look very nice, but then you're going to get to problems where you get eutrophication, and then there are deoxygenated areas of water that are causing fish kills, and they can lead to larger problems within our aquatic ecosystems. So it's definitely thinking about mainly pesticides and fertilizers for our lawn care. Definitely something that's, I'm going to admit someone into the Zoom call.
I think I just hit admit.
Okay. I didn't know if you gave me the owner permissions or not. But yeah, sounds good. So just thinking about those two main things being the big culprits for those, conventional lawn care practices, moving away from those, but still needing some way to, feed your lawn and take care of pests. But, chemicals are not the only answer. And there are ways to move away from these conventional practices and have a more sustainable, healthy lawn that is less impactful for our freshwater and saltwater ecosystems. All right, now getting into the main topic of discussion for today, how to grow a healthy lawn. So we've finished our background on our stormwater runoff and why applying conventional practices is bad. So, the big thing that we should take away from this presentation today is focusing on building healthy soils that are going to regulate themselves a little better compared to, someone who applied a bunch of pesticides and fertilizers on their lawn, and their soil microbiome is completely stripped, and they're completely reliant on continuing to add those chemical amendments. So a healthy soil equals a healthy lawn. So most of what we talk about, just try to keep in mind that it's going to somehow probably loop back to us building healthy soil, and having your good healthy soil is going to be easier for you to grow what you want, and not have what you don't want, so pests or weeds. So soil, really important building block for all plants. They're responsible for stimulating plant growth and being a habitat for a bunch of microorganisms and small insects that play a huge role in nutrient cycling and providing for your healthy lawn and growing whatever grass or whatever other plants that you want on your property. So I think I already mentioned that when you use chemical products, you can create a dependency on using them, because over time a pesticide is indiscriminate about what it's killing. So you apply a bunch of pesticides and you're going to kill some of your soil microorganisms. And then once that, microbiome isn't there, the soil food web becomes damaged, and you're continuing to rely on applying these chemical pesticides to have your nice lawn. So this yardscaping mindset, especially if someone's transitioning into adopting these healthy lawn care practices, needs to keep in mind that this isn't something that's you're gonna start adopting these practices and then next year your lawn's going to be beautiful and healthy and you have a nice organic matter layer on the top of your soil and it's all 100% good. It's a long-term process that may take years to build your healthy soil and move away from complete reliance on your continuous amendments, but it's likely going to be worth it in the end for your time and not having to spend a bunch of time maintaining it in the future. And it's important for addressing stormwater pollution concerns. So the first practice that we'll talk about is mowing better. So I know this sounds like just hearing it sounds a little silly, like how exactly does mowing better or these small lawn care practices really make a difference? But once we talk about some of the others here, and those all build on each other, everything working together helps to improve your soil health. Excuse me, I'm gonna take a sip of water really quick. So a lot of people that might be big into trying to convert to their healthy lawn care practices might get discouraged when they're trying to mow their grass and it keeps on growing back really quick, or they're getting a lot of dead patches of grass and they don't know why they don't have grass growing anywhere. And it likely is because they're mowing the grass too short, and that's causing problems, and they're not able to build years and years of that. They don't really have a nice organic matter layer possibly, and that's why it's hard for new grass to grow. And as they mow shorter grass that's there, sorry, let me restart that. Cutting grass too low can stimulate a response from grass to use energy from its roots to, I just got my head chopped off. I can't photosynthesize anymore. I need to use energy that I've stored in my roots to get that photosynthetic structure back as quickly as possible. So it shoots up. So, someone who mowed their grass down to 2 inches might see it already back to 3.5 inches in a week. And they say, oh, I need to go out and mow it again. And they continually mow their grass too short, and it stimulates that response from the grass again to shoot back up to regrow. And then you're stripping the grass from all of its nutrients that it's trying to store in its roots. And over time, you're discouraging the grass from having a healthy root system and holding that soil together. And you might have patches of dead grass and get thatch layers growing across your soil because the roots are weak and they're not rooting deeply, and you have dead, dying grass. So that can lead to a slew of erosion and compaction issues on your lawn. So keeping your grass mowed tall is better especially for keeping your root systems strong if you're having erosion issues. But for Maine, if we're growing cool season grasses, having tall grass will shade areas around it, create a little bit of cooler conditions due to the shade, and that's helpful for grasses in Maine that require cooler conditions to grow. Longer, keeping grass mowed longer to about like 3 inches or so, never mowing lower than that, and not mowing until they're about 4.5 inches creates longer, stronger roots, so you have better water storage capacity and they're less prone to being damaged. So tons of reasons why we might want to focus on mowing better to keep our grass healthy, which is, if you're on your generic conventional lawn and you're growing grass, it's important that the main species that you're growing, you are providing the right conditions for it to continue to grow well. Other mowing practices that are important are to keep your mower blades sharp. Dull blades can serrate your grass and creates uneven areas on your grass blade that might make it more prone to getting a fungal pathogen or some other disease. We should also think about leaving our clippings on the ground after we mow. Don't bag them up and deposit them in some random pile. Leave them on your grass lawn because they're just going to decompose and add nutrients back into the soil. It's like free compost. You should only probably bag your clippings. The only time you should think about bagging your clippings is if you have some kind of weed issue and they've gone to seed and you don't want those weeds to spread everywhere. So you mow over the weeds and then the seeds are bagged in the mower and then you dump that somewhere else. So you're not just adding weeds into the seed bank and you continue to have weed problems. So moving on from mowing better, I feel like I went off on a tangent there. Other tips: mow when your grass is dry. Not nice to mow when it's all wet. Just for it being very difficult to get the mower to mow the grass properly and evenly. So mid-evening, past 4:30 is a good time to mow. You should vary your mowing pattern so you're not always constantly, especially if you have like a riding mower that's really heavy, don't always constantly mow along the same path, because if you have those big heavy tires and you're constantly moving along the same areas, that can lead to strips of your soil that gets compacted and you have to deal with compaction issues. And then thinking about your last mow of the season, important. You might want to mow low down to like 2.5, 3 inches, and then think about your leaf litter that might be, if you have leaves on your property, mowing up your leaf litter and leaving some of that chopped up leaf litter on your lawn to overwinter and provide for not just like a free compost material that's going to add nutrients, but it's also a nice thing for providing pollinator habitat, overwintering areas. So that's something that is a good idea if they're instead of piling leaf litter somewhere in a landscaping pile on your property. Moving to aerating, this is another practice that is important, especially if someone's dealing with compacted soil or areas where their grass isn't growing well. So these pictures are showing push aerator. I think there's also riding aerators that people can rent, but this top left image is something that anyone can go to a Home Depot and rent one of these for a few hours. So especially if you've never aerated your lawn before, or whoever's the audience of this yardscaping, if you're here for in another organization and you want to use some of this information for giving recommendations to someone, and they've never aerated their lawn and they're trying to get new grass to grow, they want to break up some of their soil, and then there are more steps they'll get into after aeration. So very simple process. There's really not much to go into about this. There are these, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor on my screen. Don't think you can, but top right image, it's a good, or I guess both right images show a good example of what an actual aerator should look like. So it has these hollow metal pieces that stick into the ground, and when they pull out, it drops out a core, as opposed to some things that are marketed as aerators, like the spike shoes that people use to walk around on their lawn, and those don't actually aerate because they're just pushing soil further into the ground and likely causing worse compaction issues, especially if that's what you're aerating to try to address. So you're adding some space into your soil, letting some air, the nutrients fill in there, especially if you top dress afterwards, and then allows for roots to find their way through your soil. So moving on, this is really important, especially after aerating. This doesn't always have to go hand in hand with aerating, but if you aerate, you should definitely, right after, top dress your lawn with compost and rake it in. So put a really thin layer that's about a 1/4 inch or so tall. Make sure that you don't have clumps of compost sitting on top of your grass, and that you're able to see the grass blades through the layer of compost. So as that moves into the aeration holes, it creates a area of exposed soil for new grass seed or whatever ground cover, clover, or creeping phlox, or whatever you're planting on for your ground cover plants. That's going to create that nice bare spot for it to grow and fill in your grass more. And top dressing with compost and overseeding is a practice that you probably want to be thinking about performing pretty regularly every 2 to 3 years to keep on building your soil and keep on filling in spots with grass if any bare areas have popped up on your lawn, and making sure that if you want your grass lawn and you want to outcompete weeds, that you're continuing to add seeds into the seed bank. So in addition to creating some bare space for grass to grow, it also has some nutrients that it is adding to the soil. So, if you need a soil amendment, this is a great way to add something into your soil without having to add a chemical fertilizer. So if your phosphorus is low, then just top dressing with compost to let that leach nutrients into your soil is a much better way than using, a lot of these chemical fertilizers that often make their way into our stormwater infrastructure. After top dressing, obviously, I said this in the previous slide, you want to overseed. So, any small spot where there's bare soil that's inviting a weed to make its habitat. So, if you have invasive weed issues, you have a ground ivy growing, if you get rid of those and they keep on coming back, then adding your compost layer and then planting grass over that to add more of the plant that you want to outcompete your weed or invasive species. That might be a good way to manage any invasives that you don't want or weeds that you don't want without having to spray pesticides or herbicides. So for Maine, picking a cool season grass that's going to grow well in the native conditions of our state and our climate is important for having a lawn that you don't run into future issues with. So that's mainly a mix of perennial ryegrasses and fescues that are better than like warm season grasses or things like Kentucky ryegrass that are prone to building thatch layers, which gets into issues where you have a thatch layer that's growing on the top of your lawn. And if if any of you don't know what thatch is, it's, if you have grass that often spreads from, running root systems that are like at the top layers of the soil or above the soil, and they spread asexually propagate. And those, die over time or they dry out, they create a thatch material that makes it more difficult for water to permeate into the ground, depending on the severity of your thatch issue. And there are dethatchers, which are similar to aerators that you can rent from Home Depot if dethatching needs to occur. So fescues, ryegrasses, it's important to get a grass seed mix. Any grass seed that you go look at the store, whether it's Scott's or Ace Hardware or Allen Sterling and Lothrop, whoever you're getting it from, there's going to be lots of different buzzwords on the bag of grass seed. Shady mix, sunny shade mix, high traffic mix, whatever the case is, those are pretty good things that you should be looking out for. If you want to do more of a deep dive, you might I think a lot of sunny mixes you might want to look out for because a lot of them have Kentucky bluegrass. So you might try to look for a sunny mix that is mostly your perennial ryegrass and fescues. And if you flip a grass seed bag on the back, they usually all have a composition percentage of grass seed that's added. So it's easy to figure out what exactly you're purchasing. Another kind of buzzword thing is endophyte enhanced. It's they apply in the grass seed prior to you purchasing it. They've put in a fungal pathogen that's in the grass seed that isn't harmful for you or having it on your property, but it does, if the right conditions are there and the fungi like where they've been planted along with the grass seed and they proliferate and they're living in your lawn, then they can be a good deterrent for insects, particularly these 3 insects that the fungal pathogen targets particular insects. So that might be a way to prevent you from using an insecticide or have to resort to another method. But there are things like grubs that I'll get into that might require, an endophyte enhanced grass seed might not be the best option of management. Let's check time. 12:42. Let's see. Kaylee, do we need to? We have until 1. Do we want to like have a little bit of time for questions or anything?
Maybe like 5 minutes for questions is good.
Okay. I think most of this is I'll kind of speed through sections of this and
Yeah.
then yeah.
I know you
All right.
mentioned you were going to do soil testing. We have a webinar on soil testing, so maybe that could be a part you speed through.
Okay, sounds good. So I already spoke about thatch, and you know, as long as you have lots of fescues and ryegrasses, you hopefully will avoid thatch because those are not grass seeds that are typically, you get thatch layers with as commonly as something like a Kentucky bluegrass, but there are dethatchers that you can purchase to remove your thatch layer, and that is not a practice that needs to happen very often, like maybe once every 5 years if you have recurring thatch issues. Watering, lots of people overwater their grass, especially in the midsummer. So it's really important that you're not, someone's not setting their sprinklers going every single day. Some of that is just going to kind of not even absorb into the grass, and it's going to end up just being saturated and might just run off somewhere that's not, run off into the groundwater onto down a hill or onto your neighbor's property or something. So important to think about your water usage and probably only water about 1 to 1.5 inches a week. In the heat of the summer, sometimes it might look like your grass is dying. So there's might be a 2-3 week period where all your grass is starting to turn brown. And that's because their grass is entering a period of dormancy in order to get through the drought. And some people water to, they see that their grass is brown, they water it, it breaks dormancy, and then their grass dies. But had they just let the grass sit, it probably would have gotten through dormancy because it's purposely storing water and just holding on until that drought period breaks. But sometimes it can be hard to tell if grass is dormant or dead, and there's like a pull test you can do. If you pull brown grass and its roots pop out, then it's probably dead. But if you pull on a piece of brown grass or a section of brown grass and it's still, got some, feels like it has some life to it and it's not just crumbling in your hands and the roots aren't pulling out, then it's probably alive and it's just dormant. Important to water early in the morning before it gets, to the heat of the day, so it doesn't just all evaporate. It gives it time during the cool period of the day to absorb and actually get into the ground for the grass roots. And it's important to do a deep water instead of doing like, little bits of water each day, because a little bit of water each day can cause what you see in this middle frame of this picture here, where you have, or sorry, the right frame where you have shallow watering, just like, a 1/4 inch a day every day. And then you have shallow, weak root systems that are prone to, you get a heavy rainstorm, your grass washes away. So yeah, if in drought, make sure that you let it go dormant and just do its thing. The grass knows what's going on. Try not to water it unless you see that a section of grass is actually dead and not just dormant. Test your soil. So yeah, you guys will get into this, but important to, know what's going on in your soil before you start adding anything to it, because it might already be good. So UMaine can do that. So this is just information about how to take the soil test, available through the University of Maine, and it will provide you with just your general micro and macronutrients and any particular amendments, needs, and usually UMaine will give you like exactly how much to apply. Adjusting your pH, that is part of the soil test that you would figure out. You would want for a grass lawn, you want a neutral pH. And if there's any amendments needed, you would add lime or sulfur to the soil to raise or lower your pH. fertilizing in the fall. So Portland, South Portland, and actually recently Cape Elizabeth all have particular pesticide and fertilizer ordinances. So if fertilizer is needed, it's important to just make sure that any municipal ordinances are followed. I think there's sometimes they can be applied, Kaylee, if you know that, but it has to be, if I don't know, does Portland have to be organic, certified organic, and it can't contain phosphorus? Is that right?
I'm
I
not.
don't know.
Yes, yeah, that is right.
Okay. Sorry to put you on the spot there. Compost tea, another way to add some, fertilization to your soil without applying compost. It's an interesting thing to try that might make better use of compost and, um, another alternative to applying your lawn. Let's see, 1248. All right. I'll quickly go over this yard pests section. So, yes, pets are part of the yard pests section, I suppose, if you want to think about them in terms of, their impact on your yard. Pet waste is actually a much larger issue than many people realize. Not only do, whatever's not absorbed as nutrients for your pet that is, released as waste and it's sitting on the ground and it's decomposing, that's going to add excess nutrients and, bacteria that is going to make its way eventually into, the nearest water body. And also, naturally, if you think about, take Portland, Maine, if you think about how many dog owners there are in a single square mile, that is probably way more than what a natural rate would be for dogs. I mean, if you have 100 dog owners per, like, 2 or so square miles, that is a lot of dogs that are going outside constantly and adding waste onto the ground, or, you see people not scooping up their dog waste. So larger issue, important to address that on your property, and then use particular grass seed mixes that are might be more resistant to, nitrogen that's coming from their urine and waste. And then if it is a problem where you get a lot of nitrogen burning, there are diets you can put your dog on to prevent that. Ants are a natural thing on lawns. It's habitat for them, especially if you have sandy soils. They're actually good at naturally aerating your lawns. So, we recommend that you try to keep something like ants on your property and just try to live with them. But if you don't want them in your house, then you should take preventative measures to keep them out of your house instead of trying to, take care of them by using some kind of chemical insecticide once they're into your house. Grubs can be quite damaging to your lawn. Looking at a lawn that is otherwise seemingly healthy, but you have a bunch of random, spots where your grass is brown and dying and the root systems are terrible. That might be a cause of, the grubs that are eating your soil, or in your soil eating your roots, which are, grubs are beetle larvae. So if you have a lot of like Japanese beetles or other beetles on your property, kind of dealing with the grubs in your soil, and also it's like chicken and egg scenario, dealing with the beetles that are for some reason attracted to living on your property, and then also dealing with the grubs in your soil. The two main things that are recommended for controlling grubs are applying nematodes, which often take a few years of applications for you to start seeing results. And also, there's milky spore, which is a pathogen that historically hasn't been great for use in Maine because our warm season isn't long enough, but maybe as Maine's climate is changing a little bit and our falls are getting a little warmer, those are another option, both that target grubs. Ticks, Maine, everyone has ticks. It's kind of hard to avoid them, but if you have areas of your lawn that are near a wooded edge, maybe you start setting up a buffer to create some space between where you recreate or where you do your gardening or whatever, and away from the tick habitat. So getting into creating a yard buffer to avoid those areas is the best way to go, other than spraying. And then lastly, mosquitoes. Best way to reduce these is to eliminate areas of standing water and get rid of their breeding sites, reduce their resting areas where you have a wet area with a lot of dense woody shrubs. You know, move your recreational areas away from those, or remove the woody shrubs if possible in wet areas, as long as it's not going to have a larger, ecological impact or stormwater impact. Maintenance calendar. I will go through this as quickly as possible. So for spring, do your weeding once you start seeing things pop up. Much easier to weed before things are huge and the root systems are a little overwhelming for you to pull out of the ground. Maybe you aerate and top dress only if you have poor soils, or like the soil tests indicated, had results that maybe indicated that you should, or if your budget's good, you can aerate and top dress, but then overseed. Make sure you sharpen your mower blades, prep them for the summer. Start mowing your grass down to 3 inches, maybe, if you want to do the no-mow May. That's really good for encouraging pollinator habitat for the summer. So if that's something that you follow, continue to do that. But then afterwards, start mowing down to 3 inches. And also, if you don't have a updated soil test, then make sure to get your soil test done in this period, so then you're ready to make amendments, late spring or early fall. So summer, June through August, make sure you're watering deeply but infrequently, and leave that drought period for the grass just to do its thing. Continue to mow, and then if you haven't taken your soil test, now is really the time, because you're right on the brink of that late August, early September period when making amendments to your soil is really important. That's the best time to really get things going. So follow your soil test results, do your aeration and top dressing, overseeding. Make sure that you're overseeding early enough so the grass actually establishes, and it doesn't, before the frost comes, it's had some time to store some energy in its roots so it can actually overwinter. And then mow down to 3 inches, leave grass clippings, and then maybe for the last few mows you mow low, and then mow some of the leaf litter into the lawn to act as like a natural compost and pollinator overwintering habitat. And then avoid piling snow on lawn in the winter to reduce potential compaction issues. Sweep up sand and salt that might create a spot on your lawn that's killing grass or creating a barrier area for something to pop up, or sweeping up sand and salt is just good so it doesn't drain into the storm drain. And then plan whatever you want for your lawn for the spring. Other than this, healthy lawn care made easy, I had mentioned that there's there are tons of different lawn alternatives that are a lot more interesting than grass, and they're sometimes I think people can find it a little daunting to take on, but it's not as much work as I think a lot of people think it is. And there are tons of different things that are from very low maintenance to maybe a rain garden is a little bit more difficult, but lots of other things that you can do. And we have a separate presentation for the lawn alternatives. Yardscaping also has, I'm almost done. I just have a few more slides. We have this little duck logo. If you go into any, Ace Hardware, so like a farm feed store, hardware store, or local nurseries, so things like, I don't know, Allen, Sterling, Lothrop, and Skillins, you might find yardscaping tags on some products, and those just indicate a product that aligns with the program because it is a low input fertilizer or grass seed that we recommend because it's a cool season grass or whatever the case is. So if that's something that interests you, I believe there's a list of partner stores on our website for the nurseries or hardware stores that are in the point of sale program. And if anyone is interested, it would be really great for us to get your responses back to this survey. I can send out a link into this chat, or if anyone wants to type it in now or write it down, it'd be great to hear everyone's responses. Thank you for, I'll skip my last slide. Thank you everyone for listening. I apologize. I don't often do the presentation in a webinar format. I'm much more used to seeing everyone in person. But I hope that there was some information in there that, whether you have your own lawn or, you're working in this field and you're wanting to give people recommendations or whatever the case is, hopefully it gets you thinking a little bit more about how historically lawn care has been done and ways that you can start thinking about your lawn a little bit differently to move away from those conventional practices. So thank you, everyone. I have not a lot of time for questions. So Kaylee, if everyone needs to get moving to the next segment of this webinar, just let me know.
Yeah. We can just open it up to questions. Thank you so much for coming to speak today.
Yeah, of course. Yes, Heather.
My question's about, can you tell me more about the compost tea?
Yep. So it's kind of how it sounds. You would take your compost, whether that's compost that you have done in your backyard or you've ordered it, but you take a small amount of that and you let it sit and seep into a bucket of water that you would hook up to your sprayer or whatever you use to apply water. I mean, if you use a watering can, it can go in there as well. But you would want to, once you get your kind of watery compost solution that's been sitting in there, you'd want to make sure not to just directly spray that really concentrated water onto your lawn, because it can cause like a nitrogen burn. But if you hook it up to your sprayer, if you have a particular attachment for that, and spray it on your lawn, it acts as a non-chemical fertilizer application that you can use that might make it a little easier instead of spreading actual compost on your lawn. There's some information that if you're interested, I believe we have a fact sheet that's all about compost tea and how to get that set up.
Thank you. Any other questions? We can wrap things up. Thank you so much, Amren, for coming
Great.
today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
All right, take care, everyone.
Yeah,
If anyone
bye.
has any questions, I'm just an email away.